Alright, so now what we're going to do is take the concepts we learned last time, and we're just going to apply it in a different way, and then adding some extra fancy stuff to it. Okay, so one of the things that is really cool about Cinema is just the way that it interacts with other tools inside Cinema, and how quick you can get feedback. So with this one, I have the word MACA, and what I did was I basically rebuild it. Okay, so we're going to go through the process of building our name. Okay, instead of just like having the letters there and zooming in and out or whatever, it's kind of boring. So we want to do something maybe a little bit different. Okay, so same stuff. Set up your project in your preferences. You're starting off again. Go here, go to your files, make sure this stuff is set up. I'm going to go to a new document. And before we went to create spline and we created our text this way, and then we went to this area and did an extrude, there's another tool inside of Cinema called MoGraph, which is right here. And this has a text tool inside it called MoText. And what's neat is that you click and it's there. Okay, so it's like a one-step shop to create the stuff. So now that we have this, then I can change my text. Okay, so Sean or MACA. Okay, we have our font here still, so we can go through and pick a nice font. Again, you want to find something that's going to match the look of what you're trying to get across. Something like this is obviously a bit more of a goofy font. If you want people to take you seriously, you really can't choose fonts like that. The stencil one is pretty cool too. It's kind of a neat cartoony one. That's cool. Alright, so I'm going to go with like this one. But again, the cool thing about Cinema is that I can always come back and adjust any of these properties. As long as I don't hit C, it's never going to be locked in. Okay, so that's one area that I want to do. Now, in order for me to get this to explode, under MoGraph, I have to do a fracture. Sorry, not a fracture, a poly effects. There it is, way in the bottom. Okay, so the way this works is I get this little poly effects node, and I have to put this under the text. And that way, Cinema knows that this text is going to have an effect on it. Okay. And if I go to my transform and I start moving stuff around, you'll see that all the pieces are basically just coming apart. Okay. Now that's pretty neat how it's doing that. If I go to object, you can see there's a full poly segments, there's a partial poly segments. In this case, it's not really going to do anything different. So there's not like that many options for what we're doing with this. Okay. We really need to add or go back to our text and start changing some of our properties here. So down here in the text it says adaptive, so I can hit natural and you'll see that I actually get like maybe more points. I can go to uniform, change up some of the stuff. I can go to adaptive, subdivided. Okay, so all these are changing the amount of divisions on here. Okay, well, subdivided looks like it's a good one. All right, so what I need to do is, this is basically moving every face and object just like away from where it's at. So the reason that the A is all connected here is because they were all facing the same direction, so it pushes it out that way. We also don't have any caps on this. So if I go back to my caps, we have a cap, we just don't have a fillet. I'm going to do a little fillet on it, and you'll see that we get more pieces when we do that. Now, I'm going to just disable this poly effect just so I can see what this looks like. So I'm going to take my fillet steps up a bit more, take the radius down a bit, do the same thing here, maybe 4 steps, maybe 2 there. There we go. I'll do the constrain also just to make sure it stays in there. Okay. And what's weird is that the C really doesn't have any divisions on it. I can also go and change this to triangles, and you'll see that now I get divisions on the C. That's what we want. Okay. The idea here is you want to have divisions like pretty much all over the place. It'll just make it look a lot nicer. All right. So now if we go and turn that poly effects back on, you'll see that we get like a whole lot of pieces in here. And this could be something even cool to do. You know, you can actually like fly your camera through all the text if you really wanted to, you know, or have it come back together. Alright, so what I want to do now is add a little bit of randomness to it. So I'm going to click on the poly effects. I'm going to go up to MoGraph, and under the effector, these are all things that will affect what that poly effects does. So inside here, there's one called random, and you'll see that it goes bananas. Alright, so that's pretty sweet how it does that. Okay, and then what I can do is go inside here, and it's basically like this is what's random, like it's randomizing the position of each piece, 50 centimeters in Y, X, Y, and Z. I can also do rotation, and then just pump in some values here, and what it's going to do is it's going to randomly move each one of those pieces. Okay, so, or randomly rotate each one of those pieces. So now it really doesn't look like anything at all. It just looks like a big mess of points. And this is what's really cool, because you could really customize like how big this is. You know, you could have like this huge field that you're just kind of like flying through. Boom. You know, and then have all these pieces kind of come back together or explode or whatever. We can even make these like a lot bigger too. There we go. You can see there's like a huge mess of stuff here. All right. We could also adjust scale, and scale is a little bit trickier because right now it says set to 0. So if I say absolute scale and uniform scale, you'll see that nothing still has changed. If I take my scale down to like the negatives, we'll actually see these things starting to get smaller. Okay, now it is random, so it's not a perfect. So some are going to be like negative, super small, and some are going to get bigger. Okay, if I go to the poly effects and I go to my transform and I set all these to 0 here, you'll see that they definitely do like go away. Okay, so let's just set that back to. Now we'll set it to 2 for now, just 2. Okay, so now everything's gone because the scale is just 0, so there's nothing there. So what I want to do is I want to basically be able to turn on and turn off my poly effects, but have it like transitionally turn on. So this is where the fall off comes in, and we kind of talked about fall off before. Remember, this is like the softness of things. So right now it's set to infinite, meaning everything is getting this effect. If I set it to box, you'll see that now as I move this box, whatever's inside the very center of the box, that's what's going to be affected. And I could scale the box up like this, and like this, and like that, and really control this movement. So now you see once it's big enough, it doesn't look as crazy. Now that random it's way too much random. Okay, so I need to go back to that random, go back to my effect, my parameters, and take these down to maybe like 100 each. Okay. So if it goes too far, then it's just going to be like too much movement. Oops. Okay. So now what's happening is as this effector gets on top of these, it's going to start affecting it more and more and more. So what we can do is basically have this starting, oops, wrong one, like this. Okay. So my text is kind of like inside the box, but we can't see it. So right now everything is super random, and then as I pull this over, you'll see that my wording starts to be reappearing on the screen. And the bigger this inner box is and the smaller this box is, the more effect that will have. Okay, so you can see like that. Okay, so it's only like this area really that's getting affected, or where we're really seeing anything. Okay. Now the other thing we can do is this random also has a fall off. I can set this one to box also. Okay. And that way it'll kind of help pull things in. So I'm just going to make this about the same size as the other one. Kind of move it over here so I can see it. Might be a little bit tricky just to kind of get them because they're on top of each other to the about same size. But just do your best, get them close. Alright, so now if I grab both of these and move them and click the right buttons, there we go. You'll see how it looks like these pieces are just kind of like coming together. Okay, maybe I can make this a bit smaller. So I can hit my scale tool, scale that down. I don't know, maybe I do need to make it bigger. Let me grab the individual ones. Come on. So I'm just kind of shrinking this down. I'm trying to find a good size for all this madness to be happening. Alright, so now if you look at it, that looks pretty cool. Okay, so, and if I go the other way, it'll write it from the other side, just so you can see that too. Okay, so I'm going to go to a spot where nothing is visible, like this, and I'm going to animate these things. Now I could take both of these and animate them separately, but I could also just drag this random underneath this, and what it does is it parents it, connects it to it. So now I just need to animate this one, and it'll move both. Okay, so I'm going to get 120 frames here. We need a little bit more than we had before. And I'm going to go to my coordinates. I'm at frame 0. I'm just going to set a px. Okay, so that's my left and right. So I'm just going to set a px on that. I'm going to go up to 100 and pull that over. Okay, just until everything's built, like that. Okay, and I want to zoom in, make sure everything is still cool. If everything's good, click the button, and then obviously test it out. Okay, so that's it. That's the biggest part that's different from what we did before to what we're doing now. So now the rest of this is simply just going in here and just giving textures. So I just drop my texture on here. I go to my textures tab. I'm going to load an image. I have that metal still. I like the metal turned out good, so I'm just going to use that. Reflectance, default, GGX. Take the reflection strength up, maybe the roughness down a bit. I'm going to go back to my color, and I'm going to click the arrow and copy that channel. Then go back to my reflectance, go to the texture for this, and then paste that channel. Okay, I'm also going to go back to my basic. Let's call this metal lettering. We'll add a bump to this. Go to the bump, go to the texture, and paste that channel. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Looks metallic-y. Then for our lighting, okay, let's go and create a light. Now before we did just the regular spotlight, so I want to show what the target lights do too. Okay, so the target lights, you get a light and you get a light target. So the light itself, I'm going to just pull over here to the front. And then the light target is this other shape here that basically just aims what our light is looking at. So sometimes this is actually easier to animate this light because all we need to do is animate this one thing going back and forth as opposed to trying to rotate this light into position. So if I go to the light target, we do the same kind of spotlight stuff we did before. So I'm just going to set some keyframes on my positions for the target. I'm going to go up to, let's say 50 or 30. We'll scoot this over here, set a keyframe. We'll go up to 60. We'll scoot it over there. Maybe move it up a little bit. Set a keyframe. Go up to 90. Move it down here. Set a keyframe. Go up to 120. Pull it up there. Set a keyframe. Okay. So now, if we hit play, we're getting our animation. Okay. Now we could also adjust these keyframes. Remember, we can just move these around if we need to. So if we see it's going maybe too fast in one area or too slow in an area, we could definitely kind of rearrange those points. Or if we wanted to just delete a keyframe and then help spread out the other keyframes, that would definitely be doable too. Okay. The nice thing is, if you look at the dots that are on there, as long as the dots are evenly spaced across all three, it should move pretty relative. So these dots that are on this line, they should move pretty close to how we want them to move. And the other thing is, we have these points, and if I click on the point, you can actually move the point to a different location. And then we can also, where is my pen tool? Yeah, so we can move those points. Oops. Come on, you worked a second ago. Oh, so I got on point mode. There we go. So I can move that point and adjust it if I need to. Okay. Cool. So now we hit play and we can see what the light is doing. Okay. Alright, so now I can duplicate this. Now it's going to be a little bit different to duplicate. So I hold down Control and duplicate it. Alright, now I have a light and a light target. If I click on the one light, and I move this over, and I click on this light target here, and move it over, you'll see that it's not affecting anything. Okay, this light is still connected to this light target. So what I have to do is, you'll see this little bullseye. If I click that, then I could say, nope, this is the light target I want to use right there. So now it's connected to that one. So then I could just take and if I hit play, you'll see how the animations are, very similar in what they're doing. But obviously the light's coming from a different angle, so it looks a little bit different. But what I could do is just kind of, again, move these keyframes around. So we just grab, come on, baby. There we go. Just grab and kind of reorganize these points. Okay, you typically want to have something at the beginning and something at the end, so it always feels like they're moving. There we go. All right, and then we can again duplicate this one more time. Grab our light, drag the target to the target, because we know we need to do that. Go to the light target itself. Just swap these two around. Okay. Now I know that my last frame here is very important. Like the lighting on this one should be pretty awesome. So I'm gonna just pull this light over here. I'm gonna pull this light right in the center. Maybe even up a little bit. So that's cool. All right. So we had a platform before, so let's make a platform. I'll adjust the lights too after in a second. Okay. We want to have a platform just so it feels like it's actually sitting on the ground or sitting on something and not just floating. And then on the object itself, we'll do a fillet. Okay, and that just helps round off those corners, make it look nice. Drop a new material on here. Platform. Let's call it platform. And then this just really needs a color and just some soft specular. So something like that. And just a soft specular on there. Okay. So now I'm going to hit the Control R to render this, and we'll see that my text is basically just too blown out. My lights are just too strong. So I'm going to grab all my lights, and you can control click them and change their intensities all at the same time, which is a nice feature. We can also adjust things like color on them too. There we go. I may need to go back to that material and just maybe take my specular strength or my reflection strength up a little bit. My specular strength down. There we go. I'm going to take a bump strength back up. That's not going to do anything. I have my texture here, so that's where that's coming from. Just for fun, we want to see what the roughness is going to do. You can see the roughness just kind of like flattens out the reflections. So it also eliminates your highlights some, so you have to kind of play with where you want these things to shine. Okay. So don't be afraid to work with the stuff and try things out. Just want that up, this down. There we go. So that's pretty good. Okay. Now this is my last frame, so I really need to make sure these lights are maybe just even a little bit bigger. So I'm just grabbing them and taking their outer angle up a little bit more. There we go. Okay. Let's check shadows, and we can add some shadows to this. Now here's a trick. Like, so if I add shadows to these things, each one of my lights is going to have shadows to it, which is obviously a desirable thing. That was my dog. Okay, but this can be really hard on the surface here. Okay, so I'm going to play with things like the density of this. We could also try doing soft. We just have to make sure this is cranked up a bit, like 2000. And so now our shadows are they're a bit softer. Hard to see from where you're at. It's a bit softer right there. Okay, so that definitely helps. We'll do another thing called ambient occlusion, which will help out even more after. Okay, but this area in the back is completely dark, and what I want to do is not have it completely dark. So I'm going to create a new infinite light, and what the infinite light does is it just shines from a specific location. So it shines from here to this point basically. So if I rotate this around, it's gonna light up the back of it. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of angle it like this. And what we should get is just a nice little gleam. Like that. And then I can just take this light here on the top. Just take the intensity down. There we go. Okay, so I just want a little bit of illumination in the back. If this isn't on, let's just say I take it to 0, you'll see that this becomes very dark back here. Pulling it up, we just get a little bit of illumination, like it's kind of bouncing the light around. Okay. Now if we go into the middle of this and we render it, you'll see what all his pieces look like flying around. Pretty awesome. Okay, cool. Oops, let's go to the end. Okay. All right. So far everything is still, you know, the target lights is a new thing. This is a new thing. The materials are still the same. Let's go in here and just rename this platform. Okay. This I'm just going to call a fill light. Just filling stuff in. I'm going to take all these other lights here. Alt G to group them. And I can just put all my lights together. There we go. So now everything's just nice and clean. All right. So now what I want to do is create the animation for this. So it's very difficult to create a nice fluid camera that's going to be, it's not very difficult, but it's just a bit difficult. To create a very fluid camera that will allow us to basically show the stuff from the side here and then come around. Okay. It's kind of tricky to make that nice smooth move, especially for a beginner. So, oh, I also have, look at these. See my texture is like stretched out because I didn't go here and say this is cubic. So that should definitely help the texture read a little bit better. Maybe once it gets on there. Oh, I clicked the wrong one. There we go. Alright, so now we need to adjust that because obviously that looks horrible like that. I'm going to click on Seamless and then just take my tiles to, let's say, 5 and 5. Okay, you can also offset it. So if you want this to be just changed a little bit, you can definitely do that. Okay, so now when this thing flies apart, each one of these pieces should have a nice texture on top of it. Yep, cool. All right. All right, so now what I want to do is just set up my cameras. So I'm going to do 2 cameras in this case. So I'm going to go to regular camera here, just create a camera. There he is. And we'll set up some parameters. These boxes that are here, I don't need to see those anymore. So I'm going to go to my MoText, and I'm just going to turn the visibility off. Just those 2 red dots on top. And the same thing with my lights. I don't need to see my lights right now, so I can just turn those off. Now they'll still render, so everything will still work. We're just not seeing them in our viewport. Alright, so now back to my camera. I'm going to rotate this. I'm going to set this to, let's see what the normal lens looks like. That's kind of boring. Here's super wide. Okay, so it makes the letters look obviously huge inside here. Maybe wide angle. Yeah, that's pretty cool. The wide angle seems like a nice one to choose. Okay, so now what I want to do is basically just animate my camera from this side of the platform to the other side. So I'm going to go to my render settings. I'm going to set this to 960 by 540. I'm going to wait for some of the stuff to come on. There it is. Okay. I just want to see where my letter starts. Okay, because I want to start it actually like a little bit past the letter. And you'll see that 50 is when the letter is actually like put together. So I'm going to go to my camera. I'm going to click on my coordinates, grab all 3 of these, go to 120. And like I said, sometimes you have to like click off of your stuff in order to be able to move around. So I want to end up basically down here. Back to the camera, back to this, check this out. Okay, and you'll see that I'm basically like missing most of this stuff. Like here I see it, but then it's already put together by the time I get down to this side. So I really need to make sure that my end frame goes really far. So I'm just going to grab this X here. Just pull that back even further. Reset that key. Okay, and then hopefully I'll get a lot more of this breaking apart. Okay, and I do. It looks like there's a lot more breaking. Cool. All right, so there's one camera. Now I'm going to make another camera. So let's label the first one along text cam. And then this one will be zoom out cam. Okay, so click the little box. Got our wording. And basically we want to start off at the end of this animation and kind of frame what we want it to look like. I have like a weird rotate here, so I'm just going to reset my rotates. There we go. So like, what do I want my last frame to look like? Okay, this is going to be the memorable frame, so you want to make sure that it's a good one. Right, so like something like this, something like that. I want to keep the whole platform in the frame, so maybe something like this. Alright, so now I go to my zoom out cam and go to 120. I set my positions and my rotates. Okay, now I'm going to go into this like, let's say 50. I'll start at 50. Okay, so now I'm just going to zoom in. Now sometimes when I get stuck zooming in, I'll just use these. As you can see how I can just adjust these and it'll let me basically move my camera in. There we go. Okay, so now I rewind, I hit play. And I really want to see this stuff come together at the end, so I'm going to pull this keyframe back some. And then maybe pull this keyframe up some. There we go. That's good. Cool. So now I'm going to go to my cameras. I'm going to right click on one of these dots and go to their curve. And I'm going to grab all these curves and then just say, where did it go? Spline types. Oh, sorry. I have to click on these. Spline types, linear. Okay, so I want each of these to be linear. And then I'll grab my other camera, right click, show F curve. And the start one I want to be linear, but the end one, like this one, is fine being ease out. Nope, ease in. Come on, all three of these. It's not playing nice. I don't know if it's just not updating. It's not playing nice. Yep. All right, give me a second. Let me figure out why it's not working. All right, so I see what I was doing wrong. So when you take this and you make, let's say, this linear, it makes both of these linear, which is different than it was before. So I'm going to go to key spline, make sure they're both spline. They'll both work together, which is not what I want. I want on my zoom out cam, I want my first keyframe to just be like this, okay? And then my second keyframe, I want to be like that. So I have to make sure that I separate them or select them separately in order for that to happen, okay? So I'm just grabbing the handles and basically doing this, and what that's going to do is start off at a quicker speed and then just slow into it. Now that's just for the X. I'm going to do the same thing on the Y. Not a whole lot on the Y, so I don't need to play with that. Let's check out the Z. Yep, same thing on the Z. So use my regular zoom tools, marquee both, set my spline to soft, click off of it, grab this one, and set that up like that. Like that. Cool. Alright, so now on this one, oops, go back to that. Let me make sure that my rotates are good. Yeah, there's not much movement on the rotate, so I don't need to play with those. On the along text, right click, animation, show F curve, there we go. Okay, we really only have the position X that moves enough. The other ones don't really move too much. But we can do this to all three of them just because we have them all right here. So I'm going to grab all of them. I'm going to set them all to soft. Okay. And then it looks like it's actually what I want right now. Because I want the start of this to be soft so that it slowly picks up speed. And then when it gets here, it's like going full blast. Okay. All right, that's good. Okay. So now when I hit rewind and I hit play, it just creates just a better camera move, okay? And this camera move will work better with this cam, or the other cam, when we put them together inside of After Effects. Okay, now that did change a little bit of our animation, because you see that, again, we're kind of completed by the time we get here. So I need to adjust my keyframes a bit more. Yep, so we're already completed there. I may just go back to my poly effects and look at this F curve. And maybe just set this to, oops, I grab the points. It's so different than other programs. Set that to linear. Let's see what we get here. Alright, so this way we're actually seeing all the pieces getting built up to about frame 70 or so. Okay, and I could delay that even further if I wanted to. Like I could go to, let's say, I just pulled this up to 120 or 115. So now that's just going to take longer to get there. Good. So I just moved the keyframe a little bit further down the line. Cool. Okay. So that's good. So that's what our rendering looks like right now. So now I want to make this look a little bit more interesting than just as plain rendering. Okay. So that looks good, but it still looks kind of boring. So I'm going to go to my render settings, and over here on the left I'm going to start playing with some stuff. So I'm going to first set this to physical because I want this to be more of an accurate rendering. I'm going to set this to motion blurred and depth of field, so I'm going to check both of these boxes just so I can get an idea of which they're doing. I don't want to put them both on at the same time, so I'm going to do depth of field first, and then I'll turn motion blur on and we can play with that. Okay, and actually let's turn one thing at a time, Sean. Let's go to effect and let's go to ambient occlusion, And what this was going to do is when I render this here, it's going to basically put in a little bit darker shadows right along the edge. Okay, and it just makes it feel a little bit more solid of an object. Okay, so that's all we have to do with ambient occlusion in that. You may have to adjust your ray length depending on how big your scene is. So just be aware that if you're not getting the same effect, maybe you want to lower this or raise it depending on your scene. Okay, so that's step one. Now we can go back to physical. Then we can say depth of field. Okay, and the way the depth of field works is I go to my along text cam, I go to physical, object, and then I pick what I want in focus. So if I take this arrow and then I click on something, that is how far from the camera that object is, so that when I render this, we're going to see that back here is a little bit softer than right here. Okay, so what we want to do is have this focus distance be pretty much right in front of the camera, and then the rest of the stuff is just going to be further off and just kind of soft. Now this is going to take more time because of the rest of our scene, because all the other stuff we have in there. So I'm going to take this and just click it right here. I'm going to set a keyframe. I'm going to go up to, let's say, 60. Click there, set a keyframe, go up to 30. Click here, click there, set a keyframe. Okay, so that'll be just a good way to set some basic keyframes just to get some nice focus distance. And then right here, okay, and it changes. That's like 20 and then 40 and then whatever. When we get to this point, we have a lot of stuff back there that's going to be basically fuzzed out. Okay, so this is pretty clear right here, and that's pretty fuzzy. Under the physical stuff, we actually have other settings here that we could also play with. We could also do like a vignette. So if I set this to just so it's obvious. I'm going to hit Shift R this time just so we can see in the viewport what this is looking like. Because this way we can compare back and forth. Okay, vignette offset. Okay, so now we have a little bit of a vignette on here. You can see the coloration change. Let's see what else. We can lower the shutter speed. Exposure, f-stop. We can change our f-stop. So the bigger this is, the smaller the hole is. And then what that should do is change some of our depth settings. Okay, so now by taking this down, you'll see that we have a smaller opening on our camera, which creates more of a depth of field. So this is crystal clear where that is really fuzzy. Okay, so we get some neat effects. If I, okay, then I'm going to turn on motion blur. And on motion blur, what this is going to do is it's going to take our stuff that's moving and it's going to add a blur to it. Okay, so now I hit Shift R so we can see what this looks like. And you'll see this is going to go a bit slower. We're at 5 seconds here, 6 seconds there. Because of motion blur, it's going to go a bit slower. We're also going to need to eventually take our samples up. So we may have to turn this to progressive. Or just change this to a higher quality setting. Okay, and that's just because we're getting some grain over here in our depth of field, so we just need to get rid of that. You can kind of hear that my computer is screaming at me, and that's just because it's doing a lot of work. So I'll let this go, we'll wait a minute, and then come back to it. Alright, so there's our rendering right there. So you can see we get, compared to our last image, the ground is pretty clear right here, but then we get this fuzziness happening right there. And so my rendering actually took like 344. That's a long time for rendering. So we have to play with these settings to get, some decent results. So we were at F8, I thought, before. Yeah, 8. So I'm going to go maybe 2 here, just so we don't get everything like completely blurry. And then this is set to high, so we get some better depth of field and motion blur sampling. My anti-aliasing, we're going to set this to animation Gaussian. That's good. Our save will go here. I already have them in my renders, but I'll just call this animation. And here's a neat feature. Because we're doing two cameras, I want to put current camera, my cam in there. Alright, let's try that again. It wasn't showing. So, rendering, there we go. I'm going to click my little icon here, click that, and say camera. There we go. So it puts the $camera after it, which what it's going to do is it's going to, I'm going to put an underscore between these. It's going to save it as rendering, underscore, and then whatever my camera's name is, it'll save it as that. Okay? Name.number.extension, alpha channel, we need that. There's no sound, but whatever. Cool. And everything else should be good. Close this. Close this. My lighting's a little bit dark, so I'm just going to boost the lights a little bit. Grab these lights here. You want to do your test renderings in here just to make sure that everything's cool. Now I'm going to save this because I haven't saved a single thing. Okay. And then we can't do a regular render like we would just say, you know, render the view or whatever. We have to add this to the render queue. And then what we have to do is when we're in here, it'll pick which camera. Okay. So we want to duplicate this. So I'm just going to go up here to add current project. And I have one that I'm going to pick the zoom out cam. And the other one, I'll pick the along text cam. Okay. Here's my output file, so it'll render it with the name. There's my log. Then I just hit start. And what it's going to do is it's going to go through each one of these frames and render out each one of the frames for each one of the cameras. So depending on what else is going on in the scene, this may take a while. Oops, and I forgot one thing. Under my output, I have to make sure this is on all frames. Silly me. So we just cancel this. So just delete those, and then we'll just re-add. Yes, save that. Re-add our project back in here, and then just re-pick zoom out cam, along text cam. Then we hit the go button, and now it's going to go. So it'll do all of our frames, and then we should be good. Okay. All right, now once your animation is done, you're going to come into After Effects. So once this thing says, you know, both these cameras are done, and it may take like estimated time is an hour for this one. Okay, so it may take some time. So you may have to come into labs or render from home, whatever. So in After Effects, you're going to go to the project window, and you're going to go to Import File. And you just need to click on one of the images. So I'm going to click on Render Images 1. And it'll say, do you want to bring in your alpha channel? I'm going to say yes, pre-multiply it, please. I'm bringing my other camera, File, Import File. I'm going to scroll down to here. This is my other camera, Import, pre-multiplied, yes. Okay. So you can see if I move this over. Then I can take this and drop this onto the new comp. Then I take this and drop this on top of that. Okay, so now I have my two cameras right inside here. All right, I'm going to take the, I don't know which is which first, so yeah, there we go. So this one right here is my side swiping camera. So I'm going to use my side swipe camera for a little bit, like this, until it gets to about here. You can see the letters are coming together. Then I'm going to slide this one right in line with that. Now because it's using the alpha channel, which is transparency, we can see one between the others. So I'm going to click on this one and hold Alt and use my right bracket. Then I can just click and just drag that over one. Okay, so now it should come here and then go into this. Now this one, I don't want to start right at the beginning like that. I want to go to maybe like this. Drag that over. Drag this over. So I have a nice transition from one to the other. Okay, and then I can go through, and if I need to, I can make an adjustment layer on here and go to color correction under effects and go to curves. Maybe just boost this slightly. It's a little bit dark at the beginning. There we go. So you can see it all coming together here. Okay, awesome. And then we can add a background color. So if I go to layer, new, solid, I pick a color. Like that, let's say, okay. I just drag this to the bottom. Now I'll have a color for the background. And if you want to get fancy with it, then you can start adding stuff like vignettes and whatever else. So I'm going to make another new solid. This is optional fancy stuff that you could add. Generate under the G's. Under gradient. There it is. I'm going to make this a radial gradient. That. I'm going to swap my colors. And then I'm just going to take this mode and change that to multiply. And so that will really help kind of pull out my image a bit better. Cool. Alright, so now that we have this, you'll see that I get this like weird ramp thing here. Gradients typically like to have just on top of them just a little bit of noise. Where's my noise? There it is. Okay, so I'm just going to add a little bit of noise in that area. And that changes to final output. Oh, it's way too much noise at that size. 2, 1. That's good. Okay, so now I can just go to File, Export, add to render queue, go to lossless the word, changes to a QuickTime, H.264, go to my output 2, make sure this is in the proper folder. Final, Sarcona, title, sequence. I'm going to put final on there too. That's my final one. And then we hit the render button over here, and then it goes through and it does its magic. Alright, so there we go. So that's the end of our assignment. When you turn it in, we're going to be turning in the same stuff we did before. So you're going to copy your title folder to the desktop. Go through and delete all of your renders. I don't need any of your renders that are inside this folder, so you can just delete them. Any of your scenes, you can delete any of the scenes that are older than your latest one. Your textures I'll need. Your reference, if there's anything in here, I won't need that for this one. And that should be it. There's your final. And just as a, stuff you could do beyond the assignment, you could obviously add text to the, or add text, add audio to this. You could look up other effects that you could do to this. Maybe even do like more cameras, do a slower animation. Awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to let this chug along, and then that's it.